if we run it by a third-party manager, let's say they can do 3 or 4 units a year and we can do 8. The difference in terms of the costs could be anywhere between 160 to 240K in terms of like the valuation of the property. Property management in-house, we don't have a minimum for our in-house investments. Our investors could save 60% or more on their costs.
Imagine managing a portfolio of hundreds of housing units only to realize that the third-party partners you hired to protect your investment were actually the ones holding you back. You're personally chasing down rent checks, dealing with neglected maintenance, and watching your revenue stagnate because the people in charge simply don't care as much as you do. Our guest today faced that exact crisis in his real estate business. He made a radical operational shift that didn't just stabilize his communities, it allowed him to cut management costs in half, fill his properties in record time, and even use the resultant savings to acquire his next major investment. He stopped being a passive observer and became the architect of his own growth. Welcome to today's episode of Your Business Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Shapiro, author of Your Business Growth Playbook, and my guest today is Leo Young. Leo, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here. Very excited.
So Leo, bring us back to the beginning. You made this transition. You were a career sales advisor and you shifted into the world of real estate. Many folks dream about that, think about that, plan it, but like you did it. Tell us about that transition from a 9 to 5 to real estate investment.
Yeah. So I would say that the dots in life almost never connect when you're looking forward, unless you're, one of those that's just like strict, like you go into med school, doctor, all that stuff. But for me, like many others, it did not connect. I studied finance in college. I love investments. I love to just figure out the why behind things. I'm a philosopher at heart. So after graduating, I went into sales at Tesla. I kind of took the plunge because I knew I needed to work on an important skill that's like communication. And sales, I hated it, but I got good at it through persistence. But how I then transitioned eventually into real estate is I got burnt out, because I was there during a really tough time in the company's history. Like they almost went bankrupt. Everyone was getting like worked extra hard. I liked it. It kind of brought out the best in people. It was that eustress instead of distress. But also, I started thinking about, okay, how do I create more freedom that doesn't rely on me clocking in and out every day? So, naturally, like I just knew like, hey, rich people invest in real estate. So then I started doing research, found passive investing, did a bunch of research on that, pulled the trigger, invested in apartment buildings, and then got my license, was helping people transact across residential and commercial. So I was learning and earning, and then worked for a real estate fund for some time on their acquisitions team before starting Cornell Communities now. So we are the kind of general partner to the limited partners.
So I think a lot of folks look at real estate investing as like a passive thing, right? Something where you invest the money you've earned and build the wealth with it, right? But you wouldn't fall on to create your entire business around this and chose, I think, a pretty interesting asset class. Some folks go all single family residential SFRs, others go multi, so on. You went this direction of like manufactured housing. Talk to me about what got you into that space versus all the other asset classes available.
Yeah. So first off, it is a somewhat interesting niche because like nobody really thinks about it. And there's a lot of preconceived notions about, mobile home parks, manufactured housing. But how I got into it specifically was, so when I was at the fund, I had a mutual friend. He knew I was in real estate. He was in private equity at the time, and he knew like, oh, hey, here's this real estate guy. Let me sit him down. Let me walk him through the investment thesis because he was working for a real estate fund at the time that specifically targeted mobile home parks. And he was like, hey, man, like this thing is amazing because this, and that. Two things that stood out to me. Baseline, economically, it made a lot of sense. Like these are really, low cost form of housing. The demand is super durable in both good economies and bad. The business is simple. It's not a lot of moving parts. So that made sense. But also there was the social component to it. So impact to me is very important. That's kind of why I worked at Tesla, is because I want to help make the world a better place however I can. So the fact that I'm able to contribute to offering affordable housing, to continuing to offering that and to make it sustainable, because a lot of these parks, they're older and like, getting more dilapidated. So, continuing to put in the maintenance work, the CapEx and stuff to like maintain that was super important.
So you have this impact approach, which like speaks loudly to me. That's one of my favorite parts of entrepreneurship, right? Is that we have the opportunity to make a difference in the world. And we get to choose how to do that. I do it in a number of different ways, and you're doing it in, I think, some different and very cool ways. And that has brought you on this journey of growth, right? But that doesn't always go on forever. But before we get to the plateau part, you grew the size of the transactions you're doing pretty big. Folks always wonder about scale. You're up at the point of $75 million in transactions. Like, talk to us about the journey that got you from getting into it up to that transaction level.
Yeah. So to clarify on that, so transaction level, so I was a broker. So, I helped transact a lot in that. I would say right now, AUM rise, we're around 20 something, 30 million AUM as far as like our portfolio that we're managing. But yes, I mean, we sort of built it up from zero, and it's super tough. I mean, to be completely transparent, it's super tough. And like, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. That's why a lot of people, like high earners, business owners, they choose to be a limited partner into these deals because like they value their time. They know what they do best. They want to do that. And they want to find other people that do this part well and just let them handle it. I would say, I think initially going into it, I wasn't completely aware of it. But now, like being a GP and LP, I'm like, okay. I mean, I definitely continue to invest in other people's deals and stuff because of that. But it was a lot of like, twists and turns. Like, how do I grow this? How do you like grow through this? Do you stop here? Do you continue? And it was a ton. So yeah, I have lots to share about that.
I'm sure there's going to be some good lessons we get to on that side. So, as you were growing your business, you did hit a point in scale where you found that properties weren't being run efficiently by those outside managers. And there's a saying I've always heard in the industry, which is like, if your property managers aren't stealing from you, like you're just not aware that they're stealing from you, right? So, talk to us about like that stuck phase where you realized like the property management was sort of holding you guys back, and that was a limiting factor. What was the realization, and what was that plateau like?
Yeah. So for some context, kind of how the business model is set up, how we run these properties. So we have the communities. We have a person on site. They're usually a community manager. They live there. They're the eyes and ears. And then a lot of the work happens offsite management wise. So we have a property manager and an asset manager. Property manager does all the day-to-days, like collecting rents, maintenance, all that stuff, coordinating maybe even some repairs and lease ups. And then, asset manager kind of just make sure that everything is in line and like big picture planning. So property management, it's a very like churn and burn kind of business. I mean, like if you look at property managers, I mean, they are, I think, the thankless people of the space, the unsung heroes. And like you'll see a lot of them, they just have this certain look to them because like they're dealing with stuff all day. They're talking to tenants, like a lot of BS, like just like non-issues that people are like just, schoolyard drama, that kind of stuff. Like you'd be surprised it carries throughout your life. just like, oh, he parked there, he wasn't supposed to park there. Like I'm going to do this. So yeah, I mean, for property managers, like, it is a churn and burn job. Like it's hard to like run the business efficiently when you're firefighting the whole day. Like how do you work on the business when you're in the business? Like literally like 99% of the time. So, what we realize is that like, I mean, we've worked with like several different like third party property manager companies, and they all have different flavors to them. They do some things well, other things not so well. Some things are included, some things are not. And I think the biggest issue is like there is no comprehensive solution out there that is A, comprehensive, and B, like cost effective. Like that's like, forget about it. So, we kind of took the hard look at like, okay, well, if we're truly in this for the long term and like we want to build out a good playbook, like we really want to control every step along the process. And like, while it really sucks and like we don't want to do it, it's important to do so. It's important to our investors to do so. So like we kind of built out the property management arm as well.
One of the strategies I talk about in your business growth playbook is this idea of like working up your supply chain or looking at your biggest expense areas and how you can bring those in house. And you guys did just that. I want to dig into that a little more, but before we do, maybe help our listeners understand like the asset class we're talking about here. I think single family residential is pretty self-explanatory. You own a house, you have a tenant who lives there. Multifamily, apartments, similar concept, but you have this different class, like where you're leasing out the land, but also have units and those also sell. Like, tell us a bit more about the mechanics of like the space you're in.
Yeah. So basically, we as the investment group, we buy the entire property, and then inside there are these units, mobile homes, manufactured homes. They're legally called manufactured homes. It's just a mouthful to say, and the name mobile homes kind of stuck. It's not really mobile because they're actually like affixed to the ground. There's skirting kits and all that stuff. It's like very costly to move. So the business plan is that typically we rent out the land to the residents, and they would make their own like repairs and maintenance to their own homes. They would pay us for the lot rent, and that we maintain the infrastructure. We make the common areas look nicer. Like we maintain the roads, utilities, lighting, etc. And it's a very simple business plan, compared to other asset classes like retail. Like you need a whole office, you're like multiple elevators, same thing with multifamily, like roof fixes, they're like $500,000 a pop. Like how do you like budget for that? Your occupancy goes up and down, which is like another point of like churn and burn. And like meanwhile, for mobile home parks, it's relatively steady because this is the lowest cost form of housing out there that's not government subsidized. So who doesn't want cheap rent? So when they come here, they stay here. And, the average occupancy is like 10 plus years as opposed to 18 months for apartment buildings. So it's a very different business model. It is way tougher to bring in a new unit. It's like a mini development project because like you have to get the plans approved and like pour the pads, connect the utilities, and like bring the home in, everything. There's like a whole thing. But once you bring it in, it's like a stable source of income.
So you're making money on the leasing of that land effectively, but don't have to deal with any of the plumbing, electrical, roofing, any of that. That's all the owner of the unit's responsibility.
Exactly.
Are you enjoying this episode? Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. That'll help you get more episodes automatically as soon as they come out. So hit that subscribe button right now. And if you have a minute, leave a quick rating and review. That helps support the show. You guys are doing the management, and you're starting to deal with some challenges of like having to call residents for late rent, figure out the software and all this different stuff. And you're at a certain level of scale where you need these tools and have to handle it. So like, what does that mean for your business when you and your team are now handling the late night calls and, the rent collections and all the rest of it?
Yeah, it's easier said than done. That's for sure. I think having hundreds of tenants have your phone number is always fun, and also trying to build a system is another challenge in and of itself. So, I think for us, like for me, we never shy away from challenge. We know like even though it's hard, it's important and it has to be done. So we just have to figure out a way through it. And, in the beginning, like literally it was me. Like calls were flowing through me. I was renting it. I was logging it into our property management portal and kind of figuring it out. Cause I truly think that you have to know the process to be able to build it. And like, if you don't know, if you just outsource it, then like you're not going to build a good process and you don't know what good looks like. So, there was like some period of pain, it never goes away, but like initially, like just getting into it, kind of wrestling the beast and doing it. And that was, looking back, like I hope we never do that again, but it was invaluable to us getting this, off the ground.
So you made that shift, you got over that hump of hundreds of residents having your number and got to that point of scale. But you were dealing with cleaning up from like neglected maintenance, like some poor bookkeeping from the transition and the process and all. Like, what was the impact of that, or how worried were you about what that would do for your investors?
Yeah. So I think the fortunate part is that, we really step up. Well-being of the investors, like it was never a question, like they're always taken care of. Like it was just more so us working 7 days a week overtime and stuff like that, like 80-hour weeks or something, just to make sure things are done. But yeah, as far as the output goes, like we still make sure that the quality is there.
Now, you guys didn't have to go the route of bringing management in-house. You could have found other managers, right? Had better contracts, whatever else, and instead focus the time, resources, and so on in other aspects, right, of getting better returns for your investors. But you chose the strategy of bringing the management in-house. Why was that like the lowest hanging fruit of the choice you guys made?
So A big thing is kind of quality control. And, when it comes to investing in real estate, I mean, this is the private equity model. So, they really care about operations. Operations is like the money maker, right? I mean, yes, like you have to buy right, but like you have to have good operations to make the returns that you promise, or like you're projecting for your investors. So, for us, like we were seeing like many balls being dropped. It was just like, we're asking for things to be done, they're not done, or like we forget to follow up with it because there's just so much going on that, it just made sense to have a tighter control around it. Now we have like systems set up where we're like, okay, we're tracking like which tasks are overdue. We're all using the same system. We're building out kind of property playbooks so that we have like kind of just a single source of truth, and just building these out one by one, rather than like, right. I mean, for the third party systems, it's like, okay, how do we work with you guys? What system are you using? Because they manage other properties, and they're obviously not going to change themselves for us. So.
Yeah, the streamlining piece I think is valuable there, that now you're not trying to use 9 different pieces of software in different portals. You control all that. That's all centralized, and that is far more scalable. It often comes down to like when you implement this, right? Like that wouldn't have been the smart move out the gate for your first property, right? So, all right, in terms of other strategies, I think there's something else interesting that you'd shared with me, and that is this direction you guys went in terms of actually managing like the resale or sale or deployment of new units and all. So by bringing everything in house, how did that help or hinder your ability to get new revenue online or bring new lots online?
Yeah, so that's another one thing that a lot of the third party managers they help with, but it's just like not as quick, and in fact it was significantly slower and like worse off execution than if you just do it yourself. I think the thing with operations is a lot of things, it just requires doing it. But, with third party managers, like their business model requires them to be profitable managing other people's businesses. So that means they have to have a high volume of units that they manage. So as a consequence, like each one person that's like handling your case probably has like another 19 other properties they're managing, versus like for you, you're like, all right, guys, like we only have these 5, 7 properties, whatever, like this is all we do. And like we can run a tight process around that. So when it comes to bringing in new units, what we call infilling, there's many steps, and there's a lot of things that we need to just stay on top of other people on, especially getting like local municipality approvals. Sometimes they're slow, as they forget, someone's out on holiday. They're not super, proactive when it comes to these things. 5 o'clock hits, like 4:45, they're out. Forget about it, right? So I think doing that, being able to get a better quality control over these things and just like be more proactive and staying on top of the process has helped us like shrink the time to bringing on units online significantly.
Yeah, so I want to hear a little bit more about that infilling, right? So if you're having your property managers take care of that, you're just one more site for them, right? And it might be slower. You guys do it. It can happen faster, higher quantity, and so forth. Like, what's the financial impact of you guys being able to tighten that timeline and handle that infill sooner? Like, what does that look like numbers wise?
Yeah. So as one example, like, if we run it by a third party manager, let's say they can do 3 or 4 units a year, and we can do 8. So, the difference in terms of the costs on a pure valuation standpoint, it could be anywhere between 160 to 240K in terms of like the valuation of the property. And so, if we're able to just like condense it, do more, just, get more returns for our investors, get more projects online, then that's the way to do it.
Yeah, you're touching on something I think really valuable for our listeners there. And that comes down to this idea of like the business valuation and how that's done in your industry. And oftentimes when we talk about like the F, the A, and the Q leverage you can pull in the business, adjusting those, yes, can help revenue and profitability, but there's also a longer tail impact on that, which is how it impacts the valuation of the business. And so you guys found by handling some of this operationalization and getting this infill done faster, right? That allowed you to increase the value of these properties faster as well, which is a huge upside, more so than just the cash flow, right? That's actual big valuation piece too.
Exactly. Because like, yeah, I mean, our business model is that like we want to return the capital to investors as soon as we can. We want to de-risk their investment. So like when they invest with us, we want to just like, mad dash to like do the value add. We do a refinance, return their capital. They'll keep that snowball rolling with us. So, they build that extra stream of cash flow with zero money out of pocket. That's like the core thesis.
Oh, nice. So is that the typical model that you pursue then, that you guys buy with your investors, you increase the value, then you refi, cash out the investors?
Yes. So we return the capital to the investors, but they still maintain that ownership. So basically they generated a new stream of cash flow and equity ownership with zero out of pocket.
That's really cool. And I love how that model differs from, I think, more traditional real estate investing. So, all right. Now, it took you guys about 2 years to get this in-house property management running smoothly. Like, what were some of the biggest hurdles and obstacles you faced in bringing in this previously outsourced service in-house?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that we didn't have a playbook. There was no like property management 101. Like it's not like we went into a course. So a lot of it was indeed like figuring things out. I mean, yes, there were some like courses that teach you, but it's not like starting and getting up and running a business is not easy, right? There is no like true A to Z. So us actually doing that, yes, we didn't start from zero. It was helpful for us to know, but actually doing it, I think it was two challenges at the same time. It was like, okay, doing the actual property management work and then actually building out the systems. So those two, you have to like maintain your capacity, which is always like the difficult part. So like, how do you wrestle those two at the same time? So I think through that lesson, I will say I've gotten a lot better at prioritizing, at figuring out like, okay, what is the bottleneck at this point? How do we solve it? How do we get past it? And that's been super helpful.
Nice. And I think that's one of those things where it's like you put in the reps, you do something enough times, oftentimes finding our own way, and you suddenly discover expertise and mastery in places you never thought you'd find that.
Exactly. And that's one of the beautiful parts about entrepreneurship is that like who you become along the process is like far more important than like what you get.
That's really well said. From the outside, you have friends working 9 to 5s. They see you running your own business and they just see that duck floating across the water, but no one has any idea like the crazy swirl of water of the paddling of the feet underneath and all the trials and tribulations and stumbling blocks and things you hit along the way that get it going smoothly. Right. But that part of entrepreneurship is you get out there and you do it and you fail fast and you learn, you recover and you keep going. And you ask any entrepreneur, as I love to do, about that journey. And it is full of quote failures and major lessons learned and stumbling blocks and all. Like no one just has that hockey stick rocket ship growth out the gate with no lessons learned.
Yeah. And look, I mean, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. I think it takes a certain level of like pain tolerance, of like just stubbornness as well. But I mean, look, if you have that, it's absolutely like more fulfilling to a lot of people.
Entrepreneurship is fulfilling to a lot of people, but is not for everyone.
You're in the marketplace of value, right? Like basically the marketplace will give you $1 if you can give them at least $1.10 of value back. Otherwise, like they keep that money in their bank. So, you have to figure out like, how do you become valuable? And like that's way easier said than done. Like, property management, like, okay, fine. Like, can you do it well enough to actually check the box? Then, okay, that's starting point. But like, can you crush it? If you crush it, then people want to work with you. Fine. That's great. That's kind of what we work towards.
So let's talk about the numbers on that, right? So when you outsource property management, there's usually pretty set fee structure, kind of industry standard breakdown. What does that look like when you guys are paying for property management and it's someone else's problem versus when you insource that? Like, are you able to give us a little before after number wise on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it really depends on like the company. And so there is some like adjustability in the figures, but rough ballpark, anywhere between like 5 and 10% for a property management fee is what we see out there. People on the lower end, like the 5%, those might be like more institutional guys. They might have like, $3,500 minimum. Meanwhile, like, okay, to support a $3,500 like management fee on your property, that's not grossing that much. Like what's the break even point for that, right? So that's like a calculation that you have to run, because if your property is like 30% of your actual property's gross, if you're not careful with it. So I think that is something important that people miss out on. People they listen for the actual percentage and they're like, oh yeah, it's 5%, right? Like it's not too much. when you bring it in-house, like you have ultimate cost control. I mean, I was like very lucky to, connect with good people. I think people are what make the business work. Nothing substitutes people in this space. Like, I mean, AI like can help, but you need people to use AI for it to work. So I think being lucky enough to find someone that aligns with your vision, long-term vision, what you're building out here, the impact that you're doing. Impact is super important because like, I mean, you can make $1 anywhere, but like, why do you want to make $1 here? Is because you think it matters here. So property management in-house, like, yeah, I mean, we don't have a minimum for our in-house investments. So then like our investors could save like 60% or more on their costs. And like, if you just understand like commercial real estate is valued on a cap rate. So, 60%, like if you're saving like 2,000 a month, that's like 24,000 a year, then like 24,000 at a 10 cap. 10 cap is super conservative, right? That's like $240,000 valuation compared to like if it's a 5 cap, then that's like 480,000.
Yeah. And that again goes back to that you making a change in cash flow today has a much bigger impact on that valuation side. So let's talk about that a little bit more, right? Your quote competition out there that you're competing with to sell these manufactured homes or, the lots underneath and all. When you're able to control your costs, what does that mean in terms of what you can do with the competition?
I think for the sale of the manufactured homes, it's another model. It's one that for us as a community owner and operator, like we don't really try to profit from it. We just want to increase the amount of occupancy. So it was never seen as a profit center for us. So I think as such, the problem that we're solving for by bringing that in-house is the speed and certainty of execution. So, making sure that like the docs are signed off on, the right thing is done. We're getting photos, we're getting it placed right. And, we're passing inspection and like getting the units online.
Yeah. Oftentimes, like when you're able to control costs, or you at least better understand your numbers, you can start to undercut the competition, right? You can attract prospects better. You know how much you can pay to get a prospective customer and so forth. And so that's one of the beautiful things I think you guys did is you got that cost control in place, which gave you more of that flexibility. So if you were talking to another business owner or real estate owner that's currently feeling like stuck with poor property management, like what advice would you have for, someone dealing with some of the challenges that you face on the management side?
Yeah, I think definitely like when you're the operator / entrepreneur, it's very important to figure out like what your bottlenecks are, like what is causing you stress, what is causing your issues to not be done like the way that you like it to be. So to attack it from like kind of what matters most from that perspective, try to figure out, okay, like for example, for the property management, like are they not good at collecting rents, or are they not good at making maintenance repairs? Maybe you can start by supplementing what they have. So, I think as a business owner, like you never want to do drastic things. Like, I mean, look, I'm no Elon Musk. Like doing drastic things requires a lot of effort, a lot of resources, and like A-class people to be able to execute it well. So for the most part, you want to just make slow changes to your course as you sail along. So, okay, you want to supplement. Maybe you hire a maintenance worker that's like helping you to supplement, to work with that property manager. Yes, it's going to increase your costs, but you're going to have better execution because ultimately you as the operator, like you get paid on the property valuation, not like the day-to-day like fee stuff. So getting the better control there, and also stress. I mean, like I can't say it enough, but just like managing yourself, your mindset, how you show up as a person, as a leader, that's super important because like everything else cascades from that.
Yeah, it's well said. So implementation is not without its challenges, right? So for business owners looking to bring in, one of their top line expenses, one of the biggest cost categories, right? That's going to have some bumps, much like you encountered. Like knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently implementing this vertical integration?
I would bring in more help. So I would budget for this ahead. I would kind of mentally prepare like, okay, like these next 6 months will be super tough. It will be a transition period, and like give yourself longer transition periods than you think. I think a lot of like entrepreneurs, I'll speak for myself. Like I tend to be optimistic when it comes to these things. I tend to think that things are quicker. And because I measure from my speed, I'm just like, Just do it. Just make that call, right? What's wrong? So when it comes to other people, you have to follow up. You have to see what's going on. Are they making sense? Do they know what to do? Do they know how to do it? Do they like it? So giving yourself more buffer room for that transition, budgeting for it, bringing in people that actually can help you. So like, a fractional, COO, for example, they would give you helpful perspective. They would point blind spots out for you. I think that's super helpful. And just ask for help. I think be well networked in your space so that you can reach out to folks for help. Obviously, like return the favor, pay it forward. But I mean, reaching out to other operators for help has been invaluable for me.
I often say as an entrepreneur, it can be lonely at the top, right? But if you surround yourself by folks who are doing this stuff, like there's so much value in that as people to celebrate your successes and your wins, help you out when you're challenged and you're stuck. So that's wise advice. So we're numbers guys, right? And you look at numbers in a few different ways for investors, for the properties, and all the rest of it. Like when you and your team circle up and look at the whiteboard, the digital dashboard, and so on, like what are some of those core KPIs or numbers that you track today to know how well you're doing and if you're heading in the right direction?
Yeah, there's a ton of numbers, but I think the numbers all sort of flow up to how on track are we to the business plan? So that's like the core question. Everything kind of trickles down. So, it could be like the percentage of delinquencies, who's late on their rent, the number of open maintenance tickets, how long they're open for, budget versus actuals. Like, okay, well, did we exceed our landscaping budget this year? Did we not, and why? If there's a variance, units brought in, that's like more macro, because like when you're getting into like CapEx work, bigger stuff, it's like harder. You need more like fudge factor a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think maintaining the day-to-day focus on the little numbers, that's super important. And we use something called the EOS system. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Just like everyone has one number. Like just, if you want to know how well you're doing, like how's your number, right? And that's really helpful.
Nice. All right. So before we wrap, a few quick rapid fire questions for you. If you had to start all over again from scratch, what one lead source would you go all in on? This maybe for you, this is investors or tenants, answer that how you like, but where would you go all in lead wise?
I would go all in on operations because I mean, yes, I kind of did, but if I go all in on operations, I can get certainty of execution. I could shorten that time span, and I could basically compound my investors' money quicker so that we can get more projects in. Because like, look, if I crush it for them and like they would want to keep rolling that snowball with us. So, we just do that and we grow that way.
Nice. Aside from obviously my book, your business growth playbook, and it sounds like Traction as well, what are some of your top favorite business books?
So one book I read recently that was really good. It was the Steve Jobs biography. I read it, like 15 years after it came out, but just to understand, his mind. Steve is like a phenomenal visionary, and like absolutely he willed a lot of things into existence. And I think like as entrepreneurs, like sometimes, we get caught in the minutia of like the KPIs and stuff, but like you have to drive the boat for your team. Nobody else is going to do it. And like a strong visionary like Elon, like he's able to like just will a lot of things into existence. And I think we forget that we have that power.
Nice. Who would you say is one of your unlikeliest mentors?
It's my mother. So, I think growing up, I wasn't really brought with a lot of financial literacy. I had to learn a lot of this myself. My parents kind of just like didn't tell me much of what's going on financially wise. So like I always thought we were poor, but turns out we were house poor. Like they were just investing. But I think learning about her story, modeling after it, because like she had a career that was like basically made obsolete by Google Translate. She was a career translator, but like she had the foresight of like, all right, I think Google Translate is coming. Like I can't rely on this. Like I got to make some investments. So like she was investing in real estate. And like, fortunately, she was fine. And like, I think having that foresight of like, okay, fundamentally, how should you be thinking as an investor? That was super important. She never taught it to me, but I just learned it.
That's really powerful. We made a decision a number of years back that, previously mom and dad go out and talk about stuff and do things. And as far as the kids know, like, mom and dad are just out for the evening, not realizing the events we're at. Like, these are usually like if we're going out to a gala or some, nonprofit event, they would just know we're gone. And so we made the choice, like maybe we should include them in that and tell them where we're going and what we're doing and what the organization does. And do you want to come with us? And we started doing that. And same thing, like on the investment side, instead of just being like, oh yeah, while they're at school, a notary came by and we closed on a property, we started talking to them about like the financials of the property. We'd look through them. We'd talk about the numbers. We bring them up to speed. We show them the inspection reports. Like we started involving them more in that stuff. So it wasn't just a background thing that happened in their youth that they never knew about, right? But it was something that they have eyes on, that they have, financial literacy around. And I love that you realized, at some point later on, your mom was doing a lot of these things, and now, you see that, and she made a lot of the great moves that you're doing now as well. So
I love it. And I will add this. So like, one of the most like genius things and kind of funny to think about that I had a buddy tell me. So he does quarterly reports with his kids, and he writes a quarterly report to his kids, rating his kids and how they did, and also telling his kid what he's doing in his career and why it's important, how it helps the family. So I was like, wow, like you're teaching a 7-year-old that? Like, I got to do that too.
Right? Wow, that's great. I was surprised when you said he was reviewing them. I thought he was doing the self-review for them of what's going on, but wow. All right. So Leo, to recap for our listeners, you moved from a frustrating plateau with poorly managed properties to a bold strategy of vertical integration, which allowed you to cut costs in half, fill your units faster, and significantly lift your property valuations to fuel your next wave of acquisitions.
Definitely.
Nice. And so for our listeners who want to learn more about you, where should they go right now?
Yeah, so 2 ways to reach out. One, if you want to learn about our platform, mobile home parks, if investing with us potentially, you can go to cornellcommunities.com. That's CORNELLCOMMUNITIES.com. Or if I could be a resource in any way, I'll try to respond as best as I can on LinkedIn or on Instagram. LinkedIn is Leo Young, LEOYOUNG. Instagram, it's Leo Young Real Estate.
Nice. So thank you again, folks. That was Cornell Communities, or you can find Leo Young where you'll find me on LinkedIn. And Leo, thank you so much for sharing with us today. You've had quite a journey, and you've done a great job with that vertical integration, and your company, your team, your investors, everyone is all the better for it. So thank you for sharing so many of your lessons learned with us.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. And to the listener, I hope you got something helpful from it. The one thing I would encourage you to do is take action, just like one step. I think it's so easy to listen, just be a passive listener, but just like make yourself 1% better because of this.
Action is always greater than inspiration.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for listening. Quick reminder, hit that subscribe button right now so you can get more episodes when they come out automatically. And remember to leave that rating and review right now.